Good evening. It is time for today's Tax Talk. I am your host. I'm attorney Stephen Leahy, and it is Monday, January 31st, the year of our Lord 2022. And we're going to update the update to the update for Charlie Sheen case. And I'm going to talk about it, even though they mentioned me in the Forbes article that we're going to talk about. But that's not why I'm reviewing it. But it didn't hurt. So won't you join us? That's as much as we're going to do. Okay, so thanks so much for joining us. I am, as I mentioned, I am your host. I'm attorney Stephen Leahy. We're going to talk about taxes today. It is the Charlie Sheen case, and as I mentioned, remember last week I was contacted by a gentleman who happened to be Charlie Sheen's accountant and his representative in tax court. He was a CPA, and so I read that last week, and I gave you an update about what was happening, that it had gone back. Well, remember the original story that I did was from a Forbes story, and so this Mr. Yeager also contacted Forbes, and one of the writers from Forbes did a story on it also, and that's what we're going to talk about right now. Well, that's not what we're going to talk about. Okay. Well, that's not what we're going to talk about. There we go. We come back in. We go back out. There we go. Here we go. Charlie Sheen, income tax woes. Things are looking better. But here's the thing. They're going to talk a little bit about the Charlie Sheen case, but there's lots of good information about how what happens. Like one of the questions that this Mr. Reilly asks: what happens when you owe the IRS money? And he goes through it a little bit, and I think it's a very good article for that reason. It is shrouded around the Charlie Sheen case, but there's lots of good information for all of us in this. Again, using Charlie Sheen's case as an example. So when it comes to celebrity gossip, Charlie Sheen, who I mainly remember as the star of 2.5 Men, never saw an episode actually, I don't think, is in a class by himself. You could, for example, look up a Charlie Sheen effect if that sort of thing interests you. At any rate, given all of his other issues, it is not shocking to find that he has tax troubles. IRS has been trying to collect from him for the years 15, 17, and 18. He recently got some good news from the tax court, and there may be some lessons worth learning from his case. Again, that's exactly why we're going to go through this, because there are good lessons to learn. Based on the public record, we don't know how much the IRS is trying to get from Charlie Sheen. It is reasonable to infer that it is considerably more than the $3.1 million offer in compromise that the CPA and the United States Tax Court practitioner Stephen Yeager negotiated for Mr. Sheen. We also don't know whether any of what the IRS is looking for is a result of an audit or if it is entirely the result of Mr. Sheen filing without paying. And here's some good information. What happens when you don't pay? If you can't pay the balance, and I tell my clients this all the time, and not even my clients, I say it on the radio. I say it whenever I can to tell. Here's good advice. If you can't pay the balance due when it is time to file, and you want to be as compliant as possible, it is best to file timely. There are separate penalties for late file and for late pay. It is 4.5 per month for a late file and 0.5% for late pay. Late file maxes out at 22.5% after 5 months. Late pay maxes out at 25% after a few years. You can do the math if you care. If you have spent your life being compliant, in the back of your mind, you might think that if you fail to send in a balance due on your return, that within days a team of ninja IRS agents will drop into your backyard and commence auctioning off your possessions. That is not the way it works. What may happen is that nothing will happen, and after 10 years, you will be whole, ollie oxen free, thanks to a statute of limitations on collections. Anecdotal reports supported by statistics from the IRS indicate this is becoming more common. You may receive an escalating series of threatening letters, and it is possible that your account might go to a collection agency who will call you. If you have a thick skin, none of this should bother you. At some point, though, you may get a notice that says that they are going to lien or levy you. That's serious. The notice should tell you about your right to a hearing, which you can invoke by filing Form 12153, 12153. Requests for collection, due process, or equivalency hearing. This is very important. People get this in the mail and they ignore it because they think it's like every other of the letters that they got. And this one is very important because it gives you 30 days to file a collection due process hearing. If you file it after those 30 days, then you don't have a right to go to tax court after the appeal. That will stop the levy or lien action in its tracks. It actually won't stop a lien. If you file, they're going to get a lien, and they're going to give you an opportunity to object. But it's generally the lien is there already. Until the IRS Independent Office Appeals makes its final ruling. Generally, when you are at this point, there is no controversy about the correct amount of taxes. And then there is Reilly's 10th law of tax planning. Once the tax is more than you can pay, it might not matter how much more. Well, that's absolutely true because that's what I tell my clients. I mean, sometimes you owe so much that you can never pay it. I mean, so then they would say, well, can I get this deduction? Can't I get that deduction? It's like, what's the point? You can't pay it anyway. So reasonable collectional potential. The path that Charlie Sheen took was to make an offer in compromise. This requires a comprehensive disclosure of resources and liabilities. The tax court petition's signer by Stephen Yeager his representative shows that the tortured administration history of the application. The original OIC submitted January 6, 2020 was for $1,240,115. An offer specialist in Monroe, Louisiana got involved, and then it moved to a different OS in Birmingham, Alabama. From what Mr. Yeager told me, these specialists were not at all familiar with Los Angeles or the issues that a media personality like Mr. Sheen might be facing. A different SO, this one in LA, scheduled a conference for November 18th, 2020. Mr. Yeager prepared a 6-page memo detailing issues with the last report. At the conference, they worked through it with SO, referring each concession to the Internal Revenue Manual. I often talk about the manuals online. It's a detailed map about how they go about solving these cases. Finally, on February 24th, 2021, there was a new offer based on computations of the appeal officer in the amount of $3,130,420. The Office of Chief Counsel determined that the offer was legally sufficient, and Mr. Sheen handed over then $600,000 on March 10th, 2021, in order to bring the total paid to 20% of the offer. Area Director vetoed the settlement. Again, not unusual, to be quite honest with you. There was no further appeal allowed within the IRS. The Area Director did not provide any explanation for the reversal of the settlement officer's judgment, hence the tax court petition. Mr. Yeager filed the tax court petition on November 5th, 2021. On January 24th, 2024, Judge Foley issued an order sending the case back to the IRS appeals, which is really as good as you can get from the tax court in the collections case. This particular pushback was based on the agreement with the IRS counsel. I confirmed my impression with Lou Taskoff, who follows the tax court with incredible intensity. He blogged his answer. Mr. Reilly's comment was that this seemed a quick turnaround for the petition filed back late November. I checked out some details and concluded that Mr. Sheen's counsel, a CPA, had been around the block a couple of times, as we say in the minor U.S. outlying island, and high judge homes, and knew t'other from which said counsel is a USTCP, not an attorney. As I discovered many years ago, it's not necessarily that some animals are more equal than others, as George Orwell put it. Sometimes it's more important to know what to say to your adversary and how to say it. Getting a teletubbing IRS counsel to drop one of the cascading files confronting him or her back to appeals depends upon the petitioner's counsel, then on petitioner's IMDb listing. CPA and enrolled agents can represent taxpayers with the IRS up to appellate. The tax court, though, is, a court. So if you are not representing yourself, a low percentage bet generally, you will likely be hiring an attorney. Non-attorneys can represent taxpayers before the tax court, but they have to pass a rigorous examination that is held every other year. Very few people take the exam, and very few of them pass it. In 2018, of the 143 people who took the exam, only 22 passed. Mr. Yeager told me that the key to getting the tax court to send a CDP case back to administrative record is in order to show that the IRS has abused its discretion by, for example, ignoring something the taxpayer provided. There must be evidence that the taxpayer provided it. He pointed me to an article he had written on the subject, Preserving the Administrative Record for a CDP Hearing. Given this recognition by the tax court that the accuracy or completeness of the administrative record may be challenged, it is incumbent upon we lawyers, CPAs, and EAs who represent these taxpayers to proactively ensure that the administrative record includes all issues which are validly raised by us. That must be the sort of thing that you pick up by studying for the USTCPA. I doubted that you get it at the CPA exam. Here is Mr. Yeager's comment. I am very appreciative to IRS counsel for reaching out to me with her offer that we make a joint motion to have our case remanded to appeals and to the tax court for granting our motion. I really could not have asked for more than as this order means that I will get a chance to continue advocating for this offer and compromise, which I believe is wholeheartedly and absolutely in the best interest of both the IRS and my client. A true win-win. By enacting Code Section 7122, Congress clearly intends that all citizens have the right to request an offer, offering to pay as much as they possibly can afford. Congress's intent is clear that such settlements are a legitimate alternative to otherwise protracted and expensive collection tools, which are inconvenient for everyone involved. When the IRS accepts an offer and compromise, which is made in good faith, the IRS gets paid whatever the taxpayer's reasonable collection potential is, and the taxpayer gets a fresh start. What could be better than that for both sides? Attorney Stephen A. Leahy, hey, that's me, also heard from Mr. Yeager and gives an interesting analysis. If you have 20 minutes of a lifetime to spend, it was 20 minutes. I went through it. So there it is. He's got a link on it right there. I picked up the story from a brief mention in Tax News and Views. So there it is. I wanted to go through it again. You see that my name was mentioned there at the end. That's really not really why I read it. I thought it was great information. A lot about CDP hearings, about how it works, how some CPAs can represent somebody in tax court, but not very many. I don't know if always that's a good case, right? Lawyers are trained advocates. CPAs, not so much, in my opinion. It doesn't mean that you can't be a good advocate as a CPA. You can't, because obviously the test is hard, and it's got to, and he passed it, so that's good. He seems to be advocating for his client, getting it back into appeals. That's also good. But I thought we all should probably follow up with that, and again, because there's great information there for all of us. You don't always want to go to tax court. You want to be able to hold that out as a possibility. And when you are unhappy with the results, that you have that option to go to tax court. And not everybody does, okay, because sometimes people just wait too long. So again, I'm going to ask you to like and subscribe, and like this page that we have it. So thanks so much for joining us. And remember, if you're fighting the IRS, you begin. How do you begin? You begin with a copy of my book, Deal with Your IRS Problem Today. Deal with your IRS problem today. Go to freeirsbook.com, get a copy of my book, Deal with Your IRS Problem Today. So thanks so much for watching. We appreciate you taking the time, and we'll see you. Now, tomorrow is Crypto Tuesday. So we talk about cryptocurrencies, the blockchain, other NFTs, all of that kind of stuff. We'll talk about tomorrow on this show. So join us, won't you? We look forward to it.